got to get into Trump, Zelensky, their meeting, the after
Right.
facts, what happened during the meeting. So I got Jake here who's going to dive right into that. And, my first question to Jake was, uh, what do you think about him not wearing a suit ever? Is that a disrespectful sign? Is he trying to send a message that he's a wartime general? Like why can't he put on a suit like everybody else in those meetings?
It's a good question. And, everyone seems to have their own opinion on whose fault it was. I'll say right off the bat, I don't think anyone's really happy with how that Oval Office meeting went. I think we
Right.
all reasonable
We all
people wanted,
lost.
yeah, we all lost. We wanted to see
Yeah.
forward trajectory towards peace.
Right.
And it is telling that someone wouldn't present themselves appropriately for such a meeting if it's so important. And
Yeah.
I think that kind of played out within him overplaying his hand. Now, again, everyone's got their opinion on that. So I'm going to leave who you want to blame alone. I want to talk about what that semi-formal meeting they had yesterday with NATO and what I think they were talking about in the positioning. So, um, again, it was a non-official meeting because the U.S. wasn't a part of it. It was an emergency meeting. They all got together. And I heard a lot of talk about Article 5. And so what is Article 5 with NATO? Well, basically it's a clause for the treaty signed in 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty. If you attack one, you attack us all. That's basically what Article 5 is. And so it seemed like Zelensky was going to try and, throw the gauntlet down and force our hand and kind of impose that upon the United States. And I don't see that working out for him, and I don't think that's going to happen. But I imagine it came up. And just to give you some references to what Article 5 is, it's only being enacted one time. That was in 9/11. All the countries need to agree on it. It's not a vote. It's not a majority thing. It has to be a unanimous decision. And so I imagine Zelensky yesterday was kind of testing the waters. And I don't see that really playing out, but there was a lot of chatter about it. And I have this feeling that Trump might be looking for a way out of NATO. And I imagine that those countries are aware of it, and we obviously fund it. And so I don't think they're going to try and force our hand. But it would, based on I guess the energies, the personalities in that Oval Office meeting, anything's on the table at this point. So
Mm-hmm.
if Article 5 doesn't come through, there's another layer to this, and I'll be quick on it, but it's the EU defense. And EU defense is not the same as NATO, but they're pretty aligned on most subjects. And they have a Section 42, which basically says the same thing as Article 5 of NATO, just a little more vague, and it's never really been enacted. So I imagine yesterday's conversations were kind of in that ballpark. Um, and we can kind of speculate from here what I think is going to play out, and obviously keep the focus on financially. But are you with me so far there, Colin?
Yeah. Well, and I think, there's a lot of moving pieces. One of it is the idea that if the US continues to hold back any funds to the Ukraine, Zelensky's looking for funding from other, countries, right? I mean, I think
Mhm.
that's part of what's happening here. The thing in the meeting was, and going towards a peace settlement, I think as the US, we really wanted to secure these rare earth metals
Mhm.
and minerals that are available. And I think that is the thing that I really wanted to come out of this meeting, because we're already, a few hundred billion in the hole, if not more. So how do we, how do we gain anything out of what's happening here? And I think that gaining the ability to have these rare earth metals, lithium, titanium, zirconium, graphite, I mean, these are all things that we need. So the idea that we could get access to these would make the loss of the few $100 billion a little bit, easier to swallow.
Agreed.
And I think that was, hopefully the goal of that meeting, which went sideways, unfortunately. So I think I think there is going to be another meeting. I think we are going to come back to the table. But ultimately, I think we're in a much better position than we were before that meeting. And I hope we can secure some of these rare earth metals. Ultimately, with what's happening in the world with Russia and China and a lot of these countries continuing to gobble up mines, and China has the majority of the rare earth metals on the world in the world. We need that strategic edge, and we need it to do a lot of things that we need to do in terms of the world and our industry. So that was the thing that I was hoping would come out of it, but I think it'll probably just take a few more weeks. But I do think there is a deal there for us that's going to happen,
Agreed.
hopefully in the future.
And obviously those metals are a necessity, and we do
Right.
need to recoup some of these losses somehow. And that's, I mean, that's Trump's wheelhouse, right? Making lemonades out of lemons. And I do think the thing he did correctly was he drew a hard line. It wasn't pretty, should not have been done with the cameras on. I think that was part of JD Vance's point, but I think he drew a line in the sand that he made it clear that we're not going to get steamrolled in this conversation. And
Hmm.
Zelensky, you don't have the cards to push us around. We're just not going to let it happen. So I do think that going back to NATO was Zelensky testing those waters, seeing what sort of support he has over there. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what he needs. I mean, just look at the GDP levels of all NATO
Hmm.
countries. I mean, they don't even add up to ours. It's not even close. So
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
I think you're right. I think we're in a pretty good position to revisit that conversation. What is that going to look like? How are we going to bring them back to the table? I mean, obviously there were some egos involved there, and that's the real question mark, is the human element of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I don't know when that meeting will happen again, or I doubt it'll happen on TV, as it did
Yeah.
this last time. Anything else, Jake, on the Trump Zelensky? Any other ideas or anything else that people want to
Yeah.
know, or
Yeah, I got a prediction, because Trump's going to talk tonight, and the online posts and social media stuff seems to be it's going to be this all about Doge and that thing. But I think there is, what I really want to talk about with our audience is the financial impact of any decision made tonight regarding NATO. Again, I get the impression that, you know, Trump's probably willing to exit completely, maybe with the idea of re-entering based on new negotiated terms. Um, but the financial fallout of us leaving NATO would be rather impactful. I mean, right off the bat, for all of NATO's shortcomings, I mean, I think we all want more. United States citizens want more out of NATO for us based on what we give to it. It does offer stability, especially in that region. And obviously, markets like stability. And I mean, you started our talk off with tariffs, and look what happened last night across the board. Markets do not like instability. And so, should NATO be dissolved or have all of its teeth taken out of it, right? Because if US steps out, I mean, I think it's pretty reasonable to see maybe Italy and Hungary follow suit. So we could really see some things dissolve, bring some instability. That brings, especially towards the Baltic and Poland regions, I think we could see heightened aggression from Russia if NATO's not there to implement sanctions, or whatever their tools are in their bag. Um, but if we see that, I mean, the impact in Europe, right? They would have to cover the cost.
Mhm.
They would have financial impact. Their indices would fall. I would imagine the euro would probably drop.
Absolutely.
So, and I think safe haven demand would obviously increase subsequently.
Mhm.
And I have one final kind of point to bring in, and this just layers on top of this. We have our central bank here, and everyone talks about, everyone's got their opinion, but the EU has the European Central Bank, and that's of course based out of Frankfurt, Germany. They have one central bank for 20 countries, 20 different economies, 20 different GDPs, 20 different schedules, one policy, one monetary policy coming out of Germany. And so it's not like the EU is just rife with financial stability. And if you bring the prospect of them losing that stability through any sort of volatility with NATO. And again, I think we could see a lot of ups and downs in a very short period of time. It could be happening right now while we're talking. The financial situation over there isn't, it's not like ours over here. It's very
Mhm.
different because of that central banking situation. And so you could, the mind can easily start to see one decision snowballing.
Absolutely.
And financially that could get very interesting, especially for precious metals, safe haven, cryptocurrencies. So I know that's kind of out of left field there, but you tracking with me? Do you have any thoughts on
Absolutely,
that?
yeah. Well, and I think that's why people are here. They wanna hear what are some of the repercussions of a lot of these meetings, and yeah, us pulling out of NATO would obviously be a tremendous blow to Europe.